for those of you that don't have a background in psychology, I just want to explain a little bit about what priming is all about. So I explained that stereotypes were kind of clusters of associated information stored in memory. Well, actually that's not unique to social information or to stereotyping. That's the way all memory is organised. It is organised. We don't just have a random array of facts and information. That would be a very inefficient system. Rather, the brain organises things into related structures, associative structures, so that when you're retrieving a piece of information within a certain category, then all the information that's associated with that will become more accessible, because that's a more efficient system. So if I were to talk to you about cooking, then you might bring to mind all sorts of memories about it. So these memories become more retrievable, more accessible. So we know that's how cognition functions in general, that's how memory systems function. Information is organised into clusters, and then activation spreads through these clusters so that relevant information is more easily brought to mind. And this is what priming is all about. So if a category is activated, then the information associated with it is primed. It's more easy to bring to mind. So stereotypes function in just that way as well. If you activate the category of a stereotype, then all the other information associated with it will be more likely to come to mind and be more accessible. And we can measure that through things like reaction time studies. So if I were to sit you down in front of a computer and present strings of words, then you would be able to process ones more quickly if the categories that they were in were primed. So if I were to present salt, you would then recognise a word like pepper more quickly than a word like penguin. If things are related to the idea that's already primed or activated, it's more likely to be processed quickly. So we all have knowledge of what's in the stereotype of women. If I were to activate the stereotype of women by showing you particular cues, then traits that are associated with females, like warm, nurturing, ironing, will become more accessible, and you would respond more quickly to these traits, regardless of whether you endorse that stereotype or not. Because remember, we all have this shared knowledge of what's in a stereotype, regardless of the extent to which we believe in the stereotype. So that's what we wanted to test in our set of studies that looked at colour associations and priming in adults, to see if pink and blue cues could prime gender stereotypes in adults. So in order to do that, we presented stimuli on a computer screen. So we presented words and pictures in pink and blue cues, and we asked participants to do a sex judgment on them. So in our first study, we presented just 4 names. So things like Bob and John and Sally and Anne were presented on screen, one at a time, and they were written in either pink or blue ink. And the participants simply had to decide whether the name that was presented was a male name or a female name. You just have to respond using a key press. And what we found was that if the colour, say pink, matched the gender of the name, female, then people are able to respond more quickly. If it's counter-stereotypic, if it's a female name written in blue ink, then they respond more slowly. There's a measurable difference. So this suggests that the colour cues are activating categorical knowledge in the adults. It's activating the category of female and male. We repeated this with stereotyped objects. So we presented participants with pictures of images that were associated with men and women. So the male things were things like football boots and guns and pint glasses, and for the female objects it's things like a bra, a lipstick, a cocktail glass. And there are line drawings presented in pink or blue lines. And if the participants had to decide if it was a masculine object or a feminine object, and if it's presented in pink and it's female, they respond more quickly than if it's pink and it's male, and vice versa for the items in blue. Again, more evidence of stereotype priming. So this is not just categorical knowledge, but stereotypical knowledge, just associations that we have between these objects and the gender. We're causing interference and priming. The final study that we did in this line was looking at faces. So faces, Caucasian faces have a pink hue to them anyway. So we presented black and white images of faces. We weren't going to present blue ones because they would just have responded weirdly. So we present these black and white images of faces, and it's very easy to categorise faces, particularly if they've got hair, as male or female. It's a very quick thing. But we presented them on pink or blue backgrounds, and we got this same priming and inhibition pattern of data. So if it's a female face on a blue background, participants are more slow to respond to it, more slow to say that it's female, than if it's a female face on a pink background, and vice versa. So this is all kind of logical, I hope, and suggests that the pink and blue cues are strongly incorporated into the male and female stereotypes to such an extent that they can be activated, and they can activate the stereotype of masculinity and femininity.